This is going to be take 3. The first part is me dealing with a Gish galloping 9/11 truther. Then I'm probably delete his comment because honestly, that's all he's doing. The second part will be about a dome in the middle of the ocean, a coffin, if you will, for nuclear waste. A second thing of a 3 billion-year-old organic compound found in terrestrial rocks. Extraterrestrial origins? Yes. That doesn't mean it's alive. And this. If you stay by the truth, you will encourage the separation of separation of state from secret societies too. Not that the church would be something we want to separate as well. Self-empowered atheists fueled the biggest atrocities in history. Recent history with communists, that doesn't necessarily mean all atheists are communists. Most atheists are actually capitalists in the United States, because we're also, the majority of atheists in the United States are patriots, patriotic. But anyway, the claim that this is about is that communists cause more violence and damage because they're atheists, or at least associating with atheism, than thousands of years of religious groups justifying mass murder, or mass murderers justifying their violence by saying God did it. And politically motivated groups of people, usually driven by religion but not always, doing violence. No, actually I don't think so, but you could actually show proof of that. You could do it by the number of people killed by communism. Let's call it communism. You're not talking about atheism. Or you could talk about the secret societies killing people. This is an incredibly tiny number, by the way. And then you could actually bring up religions in general, not specifying which one, all sides, and show the vast outweighing number of it. Or not. I mean, it's a toss-up at this point. Communism is damaging. Capitalism is also damaging. I'd rather deal with capitalism, personally. But we get all to something else. But bringing up atheists because communists happen to be atheists, that's a little bit weird. The only inclusive term here is actually the communism you're probably dealing with. There isn't a long history of atheists doing mass murder. Sorry. Just isn't there. Next, I'll cover the 9/11 Gish Galloper here as fast as I can. This could take a while. Sorry. And then I'll get to the good comments for the day. Just because this thing's fat and annoying. Then the person makes a bunch of straw manning. Here we go. I guess the witness statements from firemen hearing Sarge's detonation is bogus. Yes, it is, because the ones you're talking about also retracted those statements after a while. They realized that they were simply wrong about the concussive sounds, realized it was literally things falling in the building. Because these detonations you're talking about, when they were asked to, when they happened, they actually were able to compare them to real explosions and realize they weren't explosions. That and the fact that if it was an explosion, it didn't have any effect. It didn't cause a collapse. Building 7 wasn't demolished either. No, it wasn't. You don't even have any proof of it. And again, every other recording that you can find, there's no sound of impact or explosion. The only sounds of impacts, which match up with what the firefighters were describing, were pieces of the building falling, and in some cases, people jumping to their deaths. Please pick a different subject. I suppose it really was a plane that hit the Pentagon and not a missile. Yes, it was. Because even though Judicial Watch, or Judge Watch, or the Watching Judge, the Watchers, edited that video, it is not a missile. It's too fucking big. Firemen have also stated they witnessed molten steel flowing like streams beneath the rubble. Yes, there's a lot of memes of that, and of course if you look it up you find out that they never actually said that at all. You find people using a picture where people are looking down in a hole and they have a light hanging down in it, it's lighting up everything below, and they're not looking at molten steel because the heat radiated from that, being only maybe 10-20 feet down, would melt their face, and they wouldn't be looking down there for survivors because they'd be vaporized. They were looking for survivors with a light. It looks like a glowing hole in the ground. It's a very interesting photo, but it's not molten metal. And the ones you're citing, you're going to cite some YouTube video, some guy, right? Not him later on saying, no, it wasn't molten steel, it was something else. There's a large group of engineers and architects. There used to be 10,000 of them, then it got reduced down to a couple of thousand, then a couple of hundred. Because everybody called in and said, I didn't sign on to your group, take my name off that list. And then they fought it. They only removed the names, sometimes even fake names, because they were sued by people who didn't want to be on their list of architects, engineers, and scientists for 9/11 Truth, and firemen. Every time they lose a bunch of people because they found out they've been added to that list without their permission, they add in more names from people who don't know that it's happening. Why do 9/11 truthers always falsify evidence and credence and their list of people? Always. These are people who oppose the official version. Yes, but the actual number of them is very limited because for such an out and proud group, they're very secretive about the actual people who really signed. In some cases, falsified their names. Also, some people were asked, did they have an opinion on something, and they were added to the list even if they had an opinion opposing 9/11 truthers. Because 9/11 truthers don't give a shit about facts. When I look at the towers coming down, I see a demolition. That's because you're ignorant. When I see a Larry Silverstein, I'll just fill in the rest here, take on the whole thing, when most especially he bought the building knowing there had to be demolished because of asbestos content. That's not really true. It didn't need to be demolished, it could be just rebuilt. Demolishing it would have been much more expensive than fixing the asbestos problem. That's something that everybody understands because many buildings in New York had the same asbestos problem and they didn't demolish all of them. In fact, they didn't demolish most of them. The towers were designed specifically to take a hit from a jet. And when you compare it to the jet that actually hit it, it exceeded those limits because the engineering limits, even though it really wasn't designed to tolerate being hit by the building being hit by an airplane, because it really wasn't. That was a sales point of it, but this thing hitting it, both buildings, exceeded those limits by a factor of 4 to 1. 3 to 1 is the maximum you ever do you actually do a 50% over. Nobody assumed it was going to be hit by an airplane that damn big. Stuff it. The rubble was shipped out of the country. It was taken to Fresh Kills because it had just recently become an area that you could actually use as a staging area to put stuff on. They needed a place to put the stuff because there's so much of it. So they took it to Fresh Kills. Not to dump it into a landfill necessarily, but to take it there so that they could put it someplace. They had to empty out the rubble to dig up people, mostly bodies, and also clean up the area so that the city could go back to what it was doing. There are priorities beyond your beliefs. So this is the gish gallop you've given for following statement. So tell me again that a jet hit this tower and caused it to collapse on itself. Okay, it did. But it was the fires mostly. Impact damaged, fire induced. You can decide all sorts of other things. I think that the original 9/11 report is crap, personally. I always will. There's 3 of them. There was no official group that was supposed to actually do it until it was appointed. Still shit. But you're just more shit than they are. That's saying something scary. You need to reevaluate yourself. So you're correct, and a few thousand architects and engineers and other experts are incorrect. You won't quote which ones. The only people who show up is 5 or 6 people. Nobody else out of that list ever says anything. You notice they never say anything? They just keep adding to the list when people demand to get taken off of it because they don't want their damn list getting smaller, and it keeps doing it anyway. There's some professionals who've contacted them and said, if you put my name on that list, I swear to God, I will sue you immediately. They even added people who just got out of college recently sometimes. Literally a gish gallop of expertise here. The very first time in history a skyscraper has one collapsed in this manner. No, it's not. You're claiming that this is a common demolition method and it's done to skyscrapers, but it's never been done. You're claiming this was a demolition. Show me another demolition of a skyscraper that happened exactly the same way. I'm not kidding. This has never happened before. Then where's your basis for assuming it's a collapse? By explosives. Remember, your statement is, this is the first time a skyscraper has collapsed in this manner. But you're claiming it was done by explosives. So show me one demolition where a building caved in exactly the same way as the 2 twin towers did. You don't have one. I'm not buying it for a New York second. It was an insurance job, not just for the money, but for the insurance agenda, the wars that preceded it, and it's still ongoing. The ability to detect whether or not this was an explosion-induced cave-in would have made it to where it would have been incredibly hard to do, number 1. Number 2, it would have been very obvious. Hence the reason it's not really what you're talking about, because none of the sounds are going on of that. People made up fake versions of nanothermite explosives to explain an explosion that didn't happen because there aren't any. You're a liar. There are other reasons why those other buildings were demolished, but let's just say the dancing Israelis could be... There weren't any dancing Israelis. Those weren't dancing Israelis. That's not really what happened. You don't know that one either. That was debunked a decade ago, actually. And they shouldn't be taken at their word. They never said any of these things. You're putting words in the mouths of people who didn't do what you said they were doing. They weren't dancing. Why don't you talk about the Israeli art students that weren't really from Israel and weren't art students and weren't there to cause an explosion? Why don't you bring that up too? They were there to witness and document the whole debacle. Right. Muhaha, monologuing. Would that be to document the damage to towers, total demolitions? Why would they do that when it was being played back on every television set? I'm not an architect. Then shut up about your knowing all of this shit. You're also not an explosives expert. You notice there's not demolitions experts for 9/11 Truth. Anybody want to lose their job by lying about how explosives work? Why don't you say nanothermite's real and watch someone roll their eyes and say, I'm not letting you touch a damn detonator. I'm not letting you touch a blasting cap. I do have explosive experience. No, you fucking don't. You've proven it. Because you don't acknowledge that explosives make noises that are explosives. You're using hearsay that's been recanted. What I've seen happen looks like a demolition to me. That proves that you don't know what a demolition looks like because you won't find a video showing a tower-shaped building collapsing in an identical way that was done by explosives. You have to be able to find one. I've asked people to do this before and they just get mad at me because they find out, oh, I can't prove that. If you're going to make a positive statement about this being an explosion, even though there's no sounds of explosions, at least find a fucking explosion that looks like it. You'll have to do better than that, fella. I'm no hater of critical thinking or thinking outside of the box. You're stuck in one. And it's not a box. It's a cesspit. Your explanation just doesn't fly with me. I don't fucking care. Quoting facts doesn't have to please people. If you believe there was no explosives in the tower, I didn't say that. I just said no explosions were set off. Now the rest of the video will be people slightly more sane. I really wish I would find something like this. Link to a video about extraterrestrial carbon in 2 millimeter thick rock layer in mountain terrestrial rocks, South Africa, Makhankwa mountain range, containing 2 anomalous signals in 3 billion year old rock. Electron paramagnetic resonance, paramagnetism, look it up, spectroscopy showed 2 types of insoluble organic matter. We're already at a level where we have to read 15 articles now on Wikipedia. It resembles something scientists have seen before, but not before 3.3 billion years ago. Where did they find it? Current meteorites that hit the Earth. So why not just say meteorites from space currently contain organic matter, therefore... Oh, it doesn't point to life forms, it just says it's carbon compounds. Like most carbon combining with anything else is a carbon compound. That's called an organic compound. Organic doesn't mean life form or Earth changes or extraterrestrial. It doesn't suggest extraterrestrial life, but it is extraterrestrial origin. All it says is 3.3 billion years ago, the Earth was being hit with meteorites. Or meteors. I bet you've heard this before, I had not. And it's a link to Pacific Nuclear Coffin linking. It's not a coffin. It's called Runit Island. 1977, the original plan was to line a porous bottom of a nuclear crater with concrete, but this was abandoned to save money. So this permeable soil crater has always had seawater inside of it. And cleaning operation that was used to fill it only took 1% of the transuranic material from another location to put it in there. 1982, the U.S. government task force raised concern about the severe typhoon inducing a breach because of cracks in it. Everyone else said, but in 1977 we didn't even line the damn thing with cement because we're too cheap. 2013, the Department of Energy reported soil around the dome was more radioactive and contaminated than the shit inside of it. The lagoon water around the structure has more radioactivity than the debris in the dome itself in total. The concrete dome had weathered with minor cracking of the structure, so it's a success. But the fact that they left it an open bottom filter that didn't filter is the big problem. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And yeah, that is scary. Bye.